Okay, so definitely the rate option right now is definitely for that. Right now it's like the end of that and Johnson is straight away taking the decision that they can really feeling strongly that they need the best thing for them to do. Right then itself would be definitely straight away for and for like author and like update for about like all the happenings in like the often small like development particulars and like the mini Mindflayer and everything. Right, so will be along the lines of that Nancy and Jonathan will be feeling so like definitely I'm inspiring like most likely I love Jonathan Power like Nancy that straight away calling for and they really uh, bring that awareness to like of like all the situations in like how it's more and about like the mini mind plan situation as well as like all the progress that like Dustin and Steve Spring has made and like like Russian and Zilla of like all and everything would be like I'm probably having like Nancy immediately updated the hopper like within our that emerges over time. So the hopper at that point will be in such an absolute shock and will be extremely extremely feeling proud of that proud of them is like the scenario of the achievement is definitely going to yet by sometimes at the same time that hopper will be also seriously care and worried for them, especially 11 as well. Is like the scenario that like hopper always we're telling them to like definitely like that they have done brilliant so far, but like from this point on for them to like let hopper and take handle it and basically for them to like totally hide somewhere, keep themselves safe and hide somewhere uh, safe within like the mode until hopper and team arrives will be arrives at like the mode will be along the line like about the lack of agency or like Johnson during that for really like scenario there. And so definitely at that point, so people think that during that interaction, like I'm from Nancy so even revealing to like about like the exact location of like the elevator uh, in like the housing mall that leads to like the support technology level. So that scenario that I was so like at that point, I'm looking like everyone of like Nancy will be done with like for like a different at that point, like, yeah, this like the one parent was departing with feeling extremely frustrated at that point. I'd like, uh, I'd like Nancy for like making that call, like scenario that you know, like Erica at that point will be like telling that the team of that Erica's team of like Steve and Robin that basically after that they has to take all this effort after they had done all the effort of the basically recording like the message as well as like integrating finding like the elevator leading to that the seat of machine and the laboratory business like the more finding that the laboratory and finding like the opportunity and basically like having all that fight with like structure process and like the strange things and all that that basically once if that they actually careful and wait for like for quarantine to arrive then like basically they will be straight away showing up and basically taking all the credit for like all of their efforts usually all of their efforts and hard work will be along the lines like and putting that Sharika at that point in the first manner would be telling to like Steve and and like Robin's like scenarios that I'm looking for. And I'm also putting definitely in that phone call like I'm looking for also most likely telling Nancy that basically so that like the reason Nancy should have made that call like how would be most likely will be like maybe Nancy still totally hoping Nancy Johnson like totally hoping that basically pop up that way like might bring like with like officers police officers and it's like army like police officers and like barely with like it's Russian forces in like that more in like injecting level really along the lines that Nancy might have hospitals that you know so like during that phone call like offer might have also revealed that basically that offer is already contacted like Owens and basically Owens and with like huge armies just definitely on their way even though offer might be allowed to that offer that say telling to themselves like the ratio of it like definitely with like focus attempt to definitely do not have that that do not have that all of them like put themselves into like any more painful situation definitely must range and for them to like wait until like what find out what will be like it's not better. So like definitely by the time that phone call between like uh Nancy and Hope will be done like and like Erica will be totally feeling extremely frustrated because like hearing like these like huge army and everything like showing up to let them all like stop like the folks like I'm totally bring up that when like Erica would be feeling even more confident than usual. Like not just Erica but like at that point definitely under the feeling like Dustin as well as Steve as well as like Robin as well will be feeling so extremely or conference solely due to like them finally being reunited with like 11 and like Mike and Dan uh is like the scenarios that are going. So like that some reunion might have given them that absolute extra overconfidence kind of like a feeling that like into some like they in terms of the bonding like one like I would be saying all this like I'm different that At that point, there's only spring nothing as well as like Steve as well as like Robin would be if they're off on be probably straight away feeling that like like okay, right, that really they can't just give up that different for all their hard work that was for it. We get on the lines like they would be feeling. So like at that point, I'm different like them probably saying that taking the stand that they are definitely going to head back to that uh head back to like that secret working and will never be willing to let them out and like finish what they started would be and destroy that competition along the line that they would be like say like within our and would be ensuring to like turn off or like destroy like that complex machine definitely before that operative makes it to like the kicker person of the about the would be along the line to bring like Rika and like substance and like Steve as well as like Robin to be definitely shouting out and taking that as good stand in front of that confused like Nancy and they are paid for bit only thing that like few streams network with trading. So that's like another that I'm and that point I'm like solely that this conference of like Erica and Steve and Robin's team that Jonathan as well as Nancy and like Michael's team as well getting dragged along with the feeling as if like they have no other choice but to like go along with them and help them how it should be along the line like any scenario that I'm and at that point I'm like referring like 11 situations being this like 11 struggling with like the pain of like right now for like the minimum player and everything. So definitely I'm also referring like definitely might totally most likely right now it's like totally different elements that by right now area of like the beat on to like warm water like the scenario that I'm going and at that point I'm referring maybe for like the active monster minimum player element to think like that bite mark boom like in the like dormant at that point is like temporarily dormant at that point is like scenario that I'm going to so that way but at that point that really I don't think I'm totally think that the minimum player might have set to chase down like my state it's like the scenario that something like India alone work at was shown at that showing up at like that shop where like Mike and the team made their pit stop to the quick 11 like that they are different that it might have like the mid player like he was doing that taking 11s like attack on that area which might be like the mind player like not just the mini mind player but like the mind player that weak point might be it's like head area might be the case so that we are able to find that the mini mind player might have due to that injury of that attack like or it's like weak spot like this might be the case like the mini mind player might be not having like the power to like send it like currently might not temporarily due to the injury might have not been able to like send the entirety of its like after like my thing. So like this that way like it will be for the scenario to be like really alone being tasked with like the author by like the main class to like say and like bring out 11. It's like scenario that in that way it's like due to like the element of like the minimum within like the 5 mark of like 11 totally from like to be like chasing my team down all the way to like reaching a point of like a location that might be close to like open small um, when like I'm like would be like I said going on like into like might could be like different levels like so that one more and basically that at that point still comes from like 11 going through such extreme pain and like different pain and exhaustion like like that element of like when you like within like the room like really probably suffering at that point and wasn't suffering to like 11 at that point is like looking at it and all that pain and like a lot of exhaustion as well happening and that 11 at that point self like falling unconscious like in our shadow so and like I'm going to bring like that mini Minecraft element looking like the one going off like that is like another element. So like at that point itself like I'm continuing to different like really home hunting that point will be having that lead to that push that exactly to travel to that make it work like 11 to suddenly losing to that simple travel as to like where exactly to go once like the element of the minimal graph with the long within like the right now is like the scenario itself yeah, like I'm saying, like believe from where he will be standing that to be able to like see like the lid of that office more at like a further distance exactly at like along the market that he would have been at that point uh going with, like the scenario that I'm going to make believe straight away when come to that conclusion that like the new day might be that my control is like and everyone might be totally hiding in that office more like the scenario that I'm so like really trying to like straight away head off to like the office more and I'm going to like by then like I'm going to train that way like the team of like Nancy Johnson as well as like Lucas as well as Bill as well as like yeah, as well as like and so many things like custom like team of like and Steve and like Erica as well. All of them like deciding to like definitely stop like the gate, close the gate and stop like the competition and close the gate. So like them definitely heading up. But that after steps like making it back to like the elevator and basically heading to like that secret collection energy that again is small again. It's like the scenario that in the book of the book. So like during this time like in different like Maxine and definitely might as well as like Maxine taking the decisions to like stay with like Eleven to like take care of like Eleven is like the scenario that I'm looking for. So like the government generation like while like then that things should be going down to like the season for Chinan to like the like on and like they look like I'm looking for like most likely being Rica that will be at that point as well that will be getting a lot like spotlight with like Rica for years like Rica will be pretty most likely telling on them that they will be definitely like since it's like in both like on a machine since it's like a machine it would definitely have like enough to as well as like maybe like there might be an exact and proper way to like without causing like a huge structure like to like totally have like the machine fall apart and destroy like the machine without like that being uh, attached to like the machine that causes any sort of like huge uh, explosion or anything. With the along the lines of the that Targa would be selling all of the lines that at least the answers to all the might definitely be like to think like the scientists who are like working close to like the location of like so like they are probably like become strategy, putting up the strategies as for like what their plans would be to like totally the character steps to like totally once again infiltrate back to that work all the kind of stuff in this before them to make that still infiltration and close that or some close the door of that from the moment they enter and to you straight away take that for scientists like frustrated and basically to use like because of like fireworks which like definitely I think that would have brought to like open small like they totally use all of that fireworks to like for the project like the science and basically to that they like take the science like of science and basically through interrogation to like get that crucial information out of like the scientist as for like how exactly to like turn off like that complex machine or even destroy like that complex machine without creating like and it's for the along the lines of the money like Karika was just setting up practical plan which like at that point like really like Nancy and Johnson as well as Steve along the movie fighting and Professor like looking out of that and then sticking along that exact man of like like looking out of that and that way like I'm doing them like with like Steve and Robin team of like them already having that experience of like already infiltrating into like that person and of the laboratory like and like this time like I'm like they are infiltrated to like the room of like the scientists like getting it to go done well and waiting to that they look that actual step like the doctor is pointing out like all the making to like that sort of like the scientists and basically like Harrison with them straight away as a plan like of closing and blocking like the so it's like the scenario that I was about so it's like the scenario that I was saying like that way like with like the same time as putting exit um as well as like this will be taking filling out this like part of and basically that way that through that information like I'm saying like luckily will be Robin that will be looked up Russian would be speaking and carrying on that interrogation. It's like of the scientific like scenario that is over and so that interrogation like I'm thinking, like it will be only at that point that I'm looking like for like the huge risk to like happen and like that huge backfiring to like having a plan and all of that plan would be happening while they would go through that scientific would be realizing that like that uh, that might be like 10 to different situations that may be that like there will be absolutely no way at all to like destroy like that competition without it creating like a huge exposure as well as like no way at all to like and like then also finding out like without being absolutely no way at all to like turn off like the machine without them offering those exact two keys. It's like just an app that I'm going to find. So like Robin shortly finding this out the information. And at that point, Selvam was and like by then like the Russian board will now figured out about like train preparation and like everything by then like one of like the if you have like the resembles that still like through the pathway like integrating to that exact room. It's like the scenario there. So at that point the plan back away and the Steven all of them like totally straight away running off through another exit which like until that point like they might have been then that might have block so like that way eventually the managing to like hide at like some location then that's the question about the level of it. But and like the Russian force will be like sweeping like the in the area, trying to like find them and then like eventually like the Russian force to like definitely eventually finding them like the scenario that so like at that point like like also would be think that game over for them like at that very last second is when I'm different like pop up and seeing that team of like lot of those as well as that my moment like would be at that point like basically will be coming into like comes to that person are that opposite of it. So just like I got to remember and the different like during that phone call before like the second inspiration by like Steve's team to that the people different and we never like during that phone call between like Nancy and Pop on back. Until the different like Pop only forgetting to like reveal about that like the complex machine needing requiring like two specific keys to turn on to turn it off. Like one of the keys on its clear notification might be especially for the had like that energy level free. But like the second key might be the like the position of like hop on. Might be the configuration that pop up might be currently offering only a single key while like the second key might be attacked at the person energy level free might be like a the industry. So like at that point I'm looking like the Russian post might have like by sitting around like the entire area of like the Russian energy level free looking for like Nancy and Jordan and all of them like at that point like they might have split up and they push the entire areas of minimum so like and that might it might have been only a few fucking folks number that might have found like the end up being of like Nancy and Jordan and all of them like the scenario that and so like that way like and by sheer concept like Hopper and Joyce and for Romans being like usually at that exact point like would be ending up running into that exact area or like the passing through that exact area of like different aspects. So that way like I'm throwing like focus being able to like you can say Jonathan and Nancy and like Steven also like those an outside of everything. But like during that attack itself like I'm different like the sound of it like basically uh the sound of the weapon itself like is basically attracting like the attention of like all the remaining people and like them all like rushing towards that exact location. And like that way like I'm just like them all still getting into like a corner like kind of manipulating like the scenario that I'm different. So like at that point still comes to like the Russian force like attacking what Hopper and basically that type of getting badly injured and then like at that point that Russian force near in like receive the strange thing like turning up in front of like Hopper and will be about to like interrogate Hopper right there itself in front of like Steve and all of them like the scenario that I'm looking for. So like at that point is when I'm looking for and Hopper won't be revealing anything at all. It's like the scenario that so like at that point that Russian possibility will be threatening Hopper to like totally harming like the group of like Nancy, Jonathan, Steve and all of them. It's like the scenario that so like at that point definitely with like again as well seeing with the like looking like players would be definitely will be about to reveal what like that Russian force we might have been trying to like interrogate and get the information out of them when like at that very second itself like and before like they're revealing it. Then again it's like the backup team with like Owens and this like center arm will be showing up. This is like the scenario that I'm looking at like them probably like taking off like the boss in this like scenario that I'm right. And then don't get out like the Russian force to like scenario and capture it like there's a Russian force here like the scenario that I'm visible with it. And not just remember. So like at that point I'm looking like them like opportunity. At that point even though badly injured like will be quickly taking out that the field that's in the field that will be in the type of and like them all like they are rushing to labs that home offense scientists and basically would be like pop up would be like straight away like for that sign will like reveal like the location of like the second key and this that way them getting like the second key and I'm different like using those two keys like I'm like them turning off like platform that details like the scenario that I'm going to so like by then like I'm different like the gate would have been almost in the like an open end like state which like the scenario that I'm going to so like at that very last second but it will be almost like getting open at that very last second is when I'm different like the combat between the and out and like the team like right like that the beam shooting out of like the complex material should be stopped and falling off to like the wall and to the day of the like the snap there. So like at that point, the consequent like operandi hearing lag and extremely loud lag or like kind of like a screen on like the other side on like the valve, which might be that that's the actual giant mind blur numbers analysis that numbers. So like the giant mind blur might have be completely seeing like this and that time like this like gate slowly being open from the plastic and the level of on like the real world from like side like the real world of the information and like definitely a lot of energy may be required even for like the giant of the mind blur to like only uh, to to use its own force to like open up like the gate. This definitely left the partially opened up gate, definitely going to register like according to the fact like the giant of the mind like and that time might have been like only patiently waiting as like the gate was like observing and waiting as like the gate was like each day was getting bigger and bigger. Might have been like the days that we don't surrender. So definitely it was like sudden unexpected scenario like and like the giant as like the conversation will be turned off and basically as like the gate will be slowly starting to like starting like at that point like the giant of the mind class like in an range or like basically will be like using it like tentative and basically will be trying to like prevent the gate from like being closed like the scenario that I'm so like at that point like I'm going to hope and all something else really confidence here and I'm like how the probably using this like better and basically trying to like stop like the tentative of like the giant of the mind club which would be like keeping the gate preventing the gate from that closing at that point like it's not that already so like during this exact time like in the situation in like the Hawkins mall might be that legally lag definitely by then like the mark will be so painfully empty stuff that legally like walking around like some more like basically boarding out for like 11 like in such a realistic manner like really that exactly realistic manner like boarding out for like 11 and basically by like slowly walking through like the malls like Nari while like my and Maxi completely absolutely scared and basically hiding 11 along with the somewhere within like the malls yeah, which now that I'm so like I'm just going like for it to be exact and I'm just going for to be exact at that point that was like I'm just like certain maybe a few hours like passing since like the element of like the minimum within like 11 like by won't like of the remaining of like dormant state like will be once again will be coming up into its like active state. It's like the scenario the upper like few hours like the scenario segment that point like the scenario that so like the moment like the most of element will be within like the boom will become active like and like at that point itself like really instantly like sensing elements like from like within like the mall like the scenario that I'm so like really at that point self would be usually like the track of relationship might would be still to that absolute of confidence would be slowly walking towards like that exact direction while calling out like Eleven's name and like basically on like saying that like he's like found up found up and on the range. That's the scenario that I'm looking for. So like at that point I'm like 11 would be also like the moment like the element of like the monster from like the room will be uh coming active like at that concept 11 as well would be like, snapping out and waking up from her like unconscious state as well as like the person scenario that I'm looking for. So that at that point that like 11 would be definitely solely due to like the percent of like the minimum flat like monster element present within like the boom like and 11 at that point would be also able to like instantly send solely due to that factor alone like 11 at that point like the moment 11 would be waking up from that time context state like you don't need to show like 11 at that point send would be like then like the person of like giant origin minds like so close in like the side of like the parabol like totally attempting to like prevent like the gate from being sourced in like the secret version and that we'll have to need that more like pretty much like element will be like sent instantly at that point only due to like the element of like the minimal blur in like that one of that was like the scenario that I was so like at that point I'm definitely for like 11 straight away like 11 will be like struggling to like get up and like to totally go up there and basically try to like force like close like the gate, but like Edwin won't be even able to like get up because of like the pain injury from like the wound and I'm by then like the wound will be giving even worse that like the pain will be I'm preferring like maybe being too much and basically that way like even definitely not all being able to like get up or like get up at all to like it's not that I'm looking for. So definitely at that point I'm also bring like relevant only closing her eyes and then like while deliberately like slowly walking towards like the direction towards like the mic and my face and like will be hiding like at that point like 11 like I'm looking like closing her eyes and basically focusing and basically 11 like once again entering the dark void like within us that I'm really so like at that point like 11 once again entering like the dark void and like 11 like making locating that exact location beneath like the shopping mall in the situation and Gulabasi where like the gate is like where like the gate is and usually 11 at that point like uh simultaneously in a combined manner like you can have like powers to like access like the dark void and locate like the gate while using that power like simultaneously with like the power of like everyone like dedicated power to like totally remotely attempt to like close the gate, which like the giant of the Mindflayer was struggling to like prevent it from like closing at that point. It's like the NAS like that way through 11 gaining that new power in that critical situation, forcing 11 to be able to like gain that new power to come up with like such a new power and use 11 actively by combining that those two powers like and put once again that struggling of like fight happening between that the giant of the Mindflayer as well as 11 to like close and open the gate between times and days like this now that I'm looking at in that battle as well I'm looking like while 11 would be that and the gate like using like 11 like remote elegant power like in like 11 starting to like offer like the jackpot in Minecraft and like the game will be slowly starting to like shrink once again. It's like the scenario that I'm looking for like so definitely at that point still back into like the giant water in Minecraft like usually straight away giving like the order to like really to like the mini Minecraft element within like the to straight away to like hurry up and basically to like to take out like 11. So like really at that point like going on like walking was like or on walking to like straight away running towards like the mic and mic in that it's like it's not there and different. So like really at that point mic and totally and like for there to be like a bit of like fireworks that like Lucas might have probably forgotten to like take with him while heading off to like the construction energy laboratories like the scenario they're entering. So like Mike totally using a bunch of like fireworks and like definitely I'm thinking like Mike totally using like fireworks to attack him. Really, yeah, like even though and I'm the different like it certainly landing and like really getting after that like certainly from that point using like the heat and like the heat of like the fireworks like the scenario that I'm and yeah, like I'm so that only lack only everything really only a little bit and like really only that only encouraging this will even more like the scenario that so like at that point like Mike probably like really totally starting in towards like Mike and basically Mike at that point like standing in front of that the stair maxing and 11 and like 11 to this totally at that point won't be at all caring about like all that things that about like really at all and will be solely focused on like closing the game. It's like the her eyes still like the scenario that I'm like so like yeah like my single bit only scared of that like and like Mike at that point standing in front of them and just like on white and basically at that point like Billy totally attacking Mike was like his scenario that I'm like Billy attacking Mike was like a single attack is like that Mike taking chief injury like the scenario that I'm different and like as like Billy would be walking towards like 11 and like the scare Mike thing beside her like the different Mike still holding on to that Billy's like basically like Mike still not willing to like give up and definitely still trying to like protect 11 with like everything Mike have and like definitely at that point like really ending up like hurting Mike even more Mike taking even more of that injury like within our that end of the goal and then like in that way Mike ending up in like entirely injured and sideline state like the scenario that I'm putting and like as like Billy will be walking towards like 11 like at that point I'm looking for like next for to be like maxing that will be like standing in front of like really standing in front of like 11 and like perfect 11 is like those scenarios that I'm looking for so like nothing at that point doing absolute best to like probably to be able to like reach out to like the real belief uh, even though like the real belief and reflected on the wrong moments where like nothing doing her absolute everything to like telling like those crucial details of like that core memory of like most important memories we can like really connect into like most likely what may be most likely is the loss of that Billy and Maxine like mother on that day at that beach, especially multiple so like Maxine saying all this and like it, like at that point actually getting affected to a certain bit like the real Billy within like basically like at that point while Maxine will be talking about the strong memories will be getting a tiny bit like affected with like personality side of the that way like Maxine being able to like even though Maxine not being able to like bring out briefly from like the control of the minimum where still like that attempt of like Maxine resulting in like uh, Maxine being able to like start a bit more of like time, being able to like give a bit more of time to like elements to be able to like that much increase in across of like open the gate like this scenario that I'm looking for. So like after like a bit of spoiler like Billy then attacking Maxine as well, like the scenario that I'm looking for the friends like the control of like the minimum are being that much strong that like Billy a bit of spoiler like Billy then like straight away like attacking Maxine is like a scenario that I'm going and it's like a thing like Maxine and taking side like the scenario that I'm going and then actually standing right in front of like the both we having her eyes closed and basically maybe only focusing on like closing the gate. So like Billy at that point as like Billy was about to land a powerful attack on like 11 at that very last second is when I'm looking like 11 probably succeeding in like closing the gate. It's like the scenario that I'm so like as like Billy said that Billy was land on 11 at that point so like definitely like the giant of still Mindflayer like basically like remix with that absolute disappointment and basically at that point itself, like Billy as well, screaming with that, like to minimize the within like the that from screaming at that way. And basically, like the control all of that, minimize the control of Billy like, straight away, that getting removed at that point, like the instant like the gate getting close to that, not that was the and you know, getting the name. And yet, like even after that, like I'm looking like for like the scenario to be like my and like Maxine like finally feeling live like and basically like Nancy and Jonathan and Papa and all of them like finally being on here to live and they're saying that it's the date getting close like like definitely to be obvious for them that they 11 was able to like do that remotely to get on the line that all of them will be at that point that's all different with like the things like looking at that up to them so that at that point like them or like usually making it to select the top and basically to select them all and basically that they are reuniting and basically at that point that is when I'm and like the big like totally phrasing like 11 like new powers of like remote can like at that point that is when I'm bring that joyful interaction when I'm bring that totally such because like at that point I'm looking like the moment like the gate would have so it's like I'm thinking that like the like element of like the minimum product within like the phones like element might have instantly gone into like a normal like state. Yet like even after closing the gate like that would have only gone worse off at that even at that point is like the scenario that I was expecting. So like 11 totally feeling 11 and like Mike and all of them seeing the notion that only at that point and basically them all like only feeling extremely uneasy as for like what might be going on with like it's like situation is like in the scenario that I'm yeah, maybe with that like thinking three of like Stranger Things like ending it's like a possible scenario that I'm going to talk about and my talking very interesting. Yes, so like the minimum pyramid right now is definitely for like that most of elements of the like elements that goes like totally dodging and moving away while like John would be using his like for night 5G like the scenario that I'm looking at that resulting in like Jonathan's like attempt only creating more wounds and more pain for like 11 while like that monster element will be still present. Just like the scenario that I'm with, in the scenario that I'm with. So like at that point, I'm definitely putting my stupid probably probably getting seriously angry towards like what Jonathan and like will be shouting out at like Jonathan and basically maybe even pushing Jonathan away, telling him to just stop. It's like the scenario that I'm with. And then I'm for them most likely them like might telling them to like totally prepare like warm water or like a bit more seriously more warmer water and basically for like them attempting like by like 11, having elements like by dipping like elements like white map also that kind of like extreme what it's like scenarios that I'm looking at. At that point I'm looking like even though will be going through I'm supposed to maybe going through a lot of pain and yet like at that point I'm looking like still that and maybe even going unconscious as well. It's like the scenario that I'm sending on to yet like I'm looking like at that point most likely for that moment of like the monster element that within like the whole language that is topic. It's like maybe like the scenario that I'm looking for, right? So that way like at that point like that temporary dormant space that shifting due to like the heat from like the warm what like this need happening for like the monster element. It's like this may be like an scenario that I'm looking for sitting on the room training. Okay, so that's the minimum potential right now. It's like even though speed is like the lowest among like the gang to like pick up on things like I'm looking but still eventually in like the final maybe towards like the end of like the entire of like Ring of Peace that series like I'm like that final ensure on scenario like I'm considering maybe for like a scenario where like team was like so extremely slow. It's like the slowest to like pick up on things like everything being like the one being like the game changer and like the MVP for like kind of like a scenario getting solely due to that speed by just like sheer innocent yet uh coming up with like some sort of like an actual brilliant practical plan. It's like by just saying a single word or like just very few words like and you can like feel without even though not consciously still saying something that might end up becoming that the game changer, which like neither Nancy nor like Jonathan nor absolutely not Mike nor Ben nor absolutely no one would have even thought of that. Such a brilliant strategy, usually game changing kind of like strategy using with which like the eventual maybe even the structure of like the child or thing wise yeah, like maybe all happening solely through the like innocent like kind of like state eventually which eventually will be getting formed into like an ultimate plan by like strategical plan to bring down like the optimized by Mike and also this like the revolution of that I'm doing. So it's still that way eventually getting a major spotlight and being like that's a game changer. I mean like the eventual mission future short on scenario. It's like an eventual possibility that I'm looking for right now another angle. So also like definitely my take very interesting right now is definitely for like suspension as well as processor because definitely putting that major spotlight and being definitely like doesn't like cerebral like doesn't like creation with this like mic and like the other like earlier in the down to like on that right now being that playing that role of like that directly about in like basically in like deciding like the fate of like the world. Definitely, I'm definitely I'm looking that definitely at this point like I'm looking that definitely with like a radio phone with like not navigating through radio phone from like the mall to like the from like the mall to like the underground and the level not possible like I'm developing right now stuff is the thing of the like sort of so like maybe from like might have kept this like sort of in that ice cream shop where like Steve and Robin was so the name of them like the like taking out this like sort of and basically at this point like I'm talking my and uh all of them are forgotten right now at present like we are really I will be finding that Dustin and his like sort of extremely cool and also this is like the scenario that I'm so like definitely just solely due to like the things like sort of like and like being able to like navigate from like the mall and basically provide that help to like offer and be they would make that inspiration into like that phase of shaking the elaboration and that way that solely so that way alone that can be able to like make it to like the machine eventually. This is like the scenario that I was sort of like kind of saying. And that way, participants can jump out the front like the scenario to be like trusted and reflect further of getting all that spotlight that might can look like or gather around that stuff was like the as like them through the lessons like service probably giving all that orders to like parenting us to like exactly how to like navigate and exactly which path to take in that secret option and the level of relocation and everything. So while everyone will be having the focus on like something and Erica and like Puerto Rico. At that point, is another problem of like maybe Susie doesn't select your point like by sheer points of like at that point like basically contacting like doesn't like cerebro doesn't like the scenario that I'm looking for and calling doesn't like the scenario that I'm looking for. So that needs a short interaction between like doesn't and Susie like I'm looking like Mike and definitely right now I'm looking for like nothing like brain about like mental like Susie. I think that's the name of them would be actually Susie might actually be a real definitely my prevention right now. So definitely that way like that short interaction like I'm going to like the urgency like something like cutting off like the conversation short like the scenario that I understand even that conversation, like brief conversation between like Dustin as well as like Susie, while that will be happening like I'm looking like Dustin insensitively doing that, yet like while at the same time cutting off that conversation for like, yet like and so that time like due to like that signal of between like Dustin and like Hopper and team like from that Hopper and team like even that short lack of like signal loss itself like creating putting Hopper and team into like such extreme confused and like to the state that maybe into such an extent of problems like the scenario that I'm doing and that way like Hopper and all of them realizing like that absolute value of like and potential of like Dustin and team and the as like also like now that I'm with the project right. Hopper as well as more about like realizing that about just like the scenario of time potential is like scenario like and also something like while uh upon the manipulation that way would be getting like incoming calls regularly on that point from Susie. And that point I'm looking for like definitely Rika to totally get like even more get suddenly get angry and like frustrated at like Dustin and like totally shouting at Dustin to like quickly cut short like the conversation is like Susie. It's like the scenario that I'm saying. I'm definitely I'm looking by now already with like them both like this like uh Dustin and like Targa having a lot in that common like I'm looking maybe like even though it won't be like the clear for like Dustin still I'm looking for Targa like and like since like the moment like Targa finding out that Dustin and like Targa having a lot in that common earlier since then Targa might have had like a secret crush developed between towards like Dustin making like the activity of like situation like walking with them and so like the film is like Dustin so feeling like so she that point like and basically once like Rika would be instantly finding out that like totally like like at that point like the people like uh Rika totally getting jealous and basically Rika taking like jealousy to like application towards like something and like her in an unusual manner like even being like Andrea and very frustrated more frustrated than like usual towards like Dustin that point is like scenario that I'm looking over. Definitely, I'm looking for like in like terms can be around looking like maybe for like but for the game like person and like any of in like relationship as well. In like terms simply is like the problem with that I'm looking for the other thing. Okay, so like but me much brain right now that like it might have definitely been sorry that like Hopper might have actually wanted to that help Mike, but instead might have stuck to be careful solely due to like Hopper still not being able to like let go of that perspective what might be like the case of the level is the clear especially right now even all the like of situation like Hopper seeing how like Mike was like so sticking with 11 like through all the trouble and through all the dangers and everything like Mike was not letting 11 go just being there for like 11 like Hopper totally at Cotton like witnessing all of that and basically Hopper at Cotton might have totally realized that was a mistake like Hopper right now at Cotton might be totally feeling certain extent of skills for like basically forcing controlling Mike and Eleven's like a relationship and basically forcing Mike to like life to that level and everything like Hopper and Cotton might be totally feeling that absolute kid seeing like Mike when seeing like Mike carrying like holding 11 on the shoulder and helping it and walk and everything. Might be like the case in the agreement. So like it might have been like sorry sad like Papa genuinely might have actually wanted to that self might but at that last moment like it might have been still compulsory that he was that might have turned up from telling that to that might right now in the and instead in that deciding to like stick to like be care. It might have been what might have happened right now. It's definitely no different. Yeah, like for the one concern about like for like the usual scenario to be like once like finally like the case is like the model papers and like once like correction was to be digital or capture like in the first the screen print like uh before like the season 3 and like I'm definitely like now from like the mod as like my cannot will be uh about to like head back home like and the at that point of the day most likely so like how come would be getting on to like the tasks along with like 11 would be totally at that point would be seeing how Eleven was like totally that and again that like Mike would be that picking up maybe would be about to leave on his own and back home so it's like another something like at that point I was maybe like totally at that last moment telling Mike to like get off to his like now and basically while driving back home like and with the friend that totally while Mike and Eleven will be present with lack of that car like and using that copper at that point telling that I'm sorry to like Mike and basically even telling 11 I'm talking to like 11 for like copper forcing Mike to like having posts might do like to like 11 and everything else. Hop up at that point, like totally like letting go of the ego and basically even telling uh, like my son maybe 11 that telling specifically my son like we had judged my account and basically that will be around the nice laptop to be telling my and like that's like in the scenario that I'm just sort of going and like that that those words of like hop would be like the most meaningful word of like which would be at that point coming naturally to like hopper without like having like without having like choice having to like write it down for like hopper or anything. This is like the in the scenario that I'm just going and that, that's only making my as well as like 11 totally absolutely reviewed and so it's really happy. There's like the scenario that I'm just going and my book okay, so like the legal students right now that the fact that like Dustin Steve Robin and the team had basically managed to like infiltrate into like the secret machine and the about it as well as like successfully escape from it as well as the print might have actually seriously concern for that concerning like the security of like the secret version of the about the like the all that like I'm totally putting that uh, Russian force leader like he might not only strictly given like the order to that seriously tighten up like the security in that situation and the public in like the theater strange things like the scenario that happened. So like why at present like like the game of like those and like Dome and that during that attempt at like the stealthy preparation even with like Dustin's like plan and like I'm still the level for like eventually the attempt to like explore like the competency like the spring that attempt to like initially totally backfire like it's not acceptable and due to like the heightened up security and from different skill pop up and those and more moments like my totally backfiring and like them getting captured and like at that point like unlike like steel and albums like stays like in the like by now like like the time for red light will be so extremely close for like that I'm looking for like them not caring at all about like stealth anymore and maybe I'm looking for like them up like them cancer like of Joyce the name of like Robin Joyce and like Red Omen which is like the scenario that everything like that I think was like maybe giving like the order to like take away take it straight away take the out like the scenario that I'm just like and that the last second is when I'm just maybe right now this one maybe like the backup team of like points and with like army would be like that point like would be managing to like make it exactly at that time and like their entrance like putting in like apologize as well as like Morebo and like surviving that situation just like the scenario that I'm and like that way I'm the maybe for like doing the scenario right now the maybe for like doing the scenario being so it being solely through like the backup team of like points arrival like alone that like authorization and all the finally being able to like succeed in like destroying that complex machine is like the initial possible scenario that I'm able to do and looking at. Okay, so like the minimum potential right of that like might have been exactly after like the team of like Steve, Robin and Rick and Dustin had like left with the car that I'm looking like Billy might have made it in front of by tracking 11 through tracking 11 like might have made it in front of that person or might have been like a reason that even eventually might have straight away recognized like the car of like that we parked in front of the car and like definitely to prevent like any possibility of like escape like definitely what Billy might have done might have been like sending man flag with control of Billy might have transformed Billy want to get back into like that new monster form and might have like a small portion of like that new monster might have been uh, been put into like the tailpipe of like the car. So might have been like the especially not private. So this might be the reason for like Nancy right now like not being able to like start a car might be like the actual affect the situations that limit threat. So like definitely with like Jonathan right now checking like the with like Jonathan right now checking like the front like and putting like Jonathan not right now the only feeling that is like the car not starting might be maybe due to like the heavy load. Because like I'm doing once like this narrative be like once Jonathan will be opening like the front like and like so totally seeing like the front filled with like too much of like the fireworks that like Lucas might have stolen from like that shop where they had made that big shop you know so like definitely like at that point like Jonathan like unloading a whole lot of like those fireworks stuff and like then telling Nancy to like start the car and still like the car won't be starting to like it's an upset. Right? So like at that point when I was feeling like Jonathan would be feeling like checking like the tailpipe of like the car. So like while Jonathan would be like putting the steps very close to like the tailpipe, like at that point is when I was feeling like Jonathan shockingly seeing this like monster like this like tiny monster like within like the tailpipe with like the scenario that I was protecting, which Humble maybe at that point has like uh Jonathan would be staring close to it like Humble like that monster like maybe watching out of like the tailpipe and maybe trying to like attack Jonathan. It's also like a possibility that was about the I'm not range. At that point itself Humble like the car straight away starting and basically get like Jonathan like this like tiny monster like attacking Jonathan and basically at that point itself like the giant like in like new monster form as well would be like written out of like the nearby areas like the darkness like the scenario that I'm talking about. So uh, at that point I'm looking like 11 totally in a brilliant manner like executing attack where like 11 I'm looking straight away focusing not on like the new monster really but like focusing on like that tiny part of like the new monster that will be attacking so much. So like it will be 11 like straight away using up pelican attack onto like that tiny monster and basically like that way range from that tiny monster and like Johnson like Nancy quickly shouting out like Johnson to like quickly get into like the car and Johnson quickly getting into the car and basically them totally driving off as like the new monster will be chasing after like but still not won't be able to like make it just like the scenario to like capture and just like the scenario that I'm right. So them like Nancy and like then that thing that way and also like Johnson like escaping from that the mob. So such a man of this like in the scenario that I'm of the game. And at that point, Silpam was open like spending most of like basically returning back into like Billy's form and basically straight away like I'm totally putting that to be like most likely a van or like some sort of like another vehicle that they park outside like that outside like the like looking after that like Billy like totally married and I'm looking like the keys might be on that vehicle as well. It's like scenario that I'm so like really getting onto that vehicle and basically that chase like happens between like Nancy and like King like driving in front and just putting in this like van like chasing after them. It's like the scenario that I was about to like I'm not great. Yes, a lot of friends of like Stephanie for that and Nancy most likely coming up with this like distraction strategy and basically like Nancy telling like 11 to be this like for 11 to be like absolute decoy for like by the time like the will be entering like the more like basically at that point for like 11 to like only even the like entering for like 11 to like four circles to like 5 billion and that way to like store time and do that absolute distraction so that like all of Billy's like focusability on 11 since like Billy's target itself is like 11 so that means for 11 to be that absolute decoy of like a distraction for Billy by and like Jonathan and the others like for them to like stealthily while Billy would be busy fighting 11 for like Jonathan and the others to like stealthily exit from like the mod. And then for like Jonathan to like quickly to direct instead like things like the information cable to like Nancy's car and basically for like Lucas and all of them to like quickly get onto like the car and for Jonathan to like start the car and basically for like 11 to while fighting against like Billy to like fight in such a way as to like while ensuring to like stall time as well as like while fighting Billy for like 11 to like ensure that 11 keep staying at like the area in at like the leader area within like the mall that's like so close to like the end of the like the mall like for 11 to like fight Billy in such a manner so that like by the time 11 would be hearing like the sound of like John starting like the car like basically at that point so for like 11 to like be run up through the entrance and basically to like quickly get into the car and for them all to like collectively be able to like escape from like the mall. This is what I'm looking for like the plan of like which I'm looking right now naturally being of like making it to which like might be a bit of against like because of like the play element already having this like painful injury and everything by injury and everything. So the Clear Friend Mike would be totally against like this plan of like Nancy and the Clear Friends like war that will happen between like Mike and Nancy. Due to like Nancy's like what Mike would be totally feeling that as like Nancy's extreme insensitive in the sense like lack of care, empathy towards like 11 to get on like Mike would be repeatedly collectively by now put out uh, in like the way Nancy thinks it's like 11 is like the scenario that happens about everything. So definitely I'm just going like a short quarter, but like I'm just since like time will be short and like they wouldn't have any other plan like I'm sitting like then we supposed to like stick to that plan. So definitely at that point like I'm yet like I'm just like Mike at that point telling them that basically that like he's not going to like let 11 fight Billy or alone by herself. Like so like Mike as well as like Maxine as well to be coordinating and like Maxine and Mike is deciding to like stay back with like 11 by 11 be fighting against like Lily like the scenario that I'm starting. But like I'm just looking at that point since like 11 will be shouting out would be continue telling we to like a secret be telling to like Mike as well as like Maxine that they have to like go along with like the others and get so that also as soon as we will get into like the car by the time like don't start the car so that like with because like if they stand back with like 11 that they will only be ending up being a burden to like 11 in like a fight against like they would be along the lines of like 11 with like a piece of space like telling to like Mike as well as like Mike. There's like the scenario that I understand. But like only at that point that Mike as well as like Mike be deciding to like even though it's extreme or like completely would be deciding to like leave 11 behind for like the fight against like the scenario that I was delivering. And definitely I'm looking like Sam started fully putting off like the plan. And definitely I'm looking like even with like the pain with like some injured like and still even like with all that pain like still managing to like in those progress but still managing to like and I'm just like while trying to like run and make it towards like the car like even falling like due to the injury and everything like even probably falling like scenario that happened and believe that after the conference like will be slowly walking towards like the direction of like 11 from like to the like the models like scenario that I'm yet like I'm looking quickly and that point might most likely getting out of like the car and quickly like carrying 11 and like getting back into like, the car and basically when we prove that the manner that I'm going to maybe for like them managing like their escape by the time will be like making it out like the more like the scenario because they have like the scenario that I'm and really straight away like getting onto this car and they need that safe and that leads to the amount of permission for such a chase that need to like happen. Like my contain in like in like Nancy's car, which they bring at that point like it's like we John Touch would be trying while Billy would be taking after that in like Billy's car. It's like very scenario that I'm also different and not frame. And also the level of the emissions or like in which scenario where like during that chase like being only during that chase that I'm so different like Billy would be unleashing like the minimum plan that while controlling Billy would be unleashing like all sorts of unique powers of like the minimum plan like Billy most likely certainly like just like about that cut off like radiation cable that's I think like basically so that there might be other power like other all sorts of like flying creatures that like temporarily like the power of the minimum plan like really creating while during that chase and basically sending out of like the car of like while chasing like the car of like Mike and the like the scenario that I'm developing while Lucas and the everything would be on like sitting on like the back seat and the player was like Lucas totally fighting back Lucas and with totally fighting back against that really using like the fireworks using what okay using like the fireworks that they will be having the like the scenario that I was in. So like such the battle between actually and the while Philly stars will be chasing their car is like an evil scenario that I'm looking. And in that case, like I'm definitely probably like eventually really totally winning like that fight, that battle and basically eventually like I'm totally putting that car ending up that car jump will be finally ending up crashing like the possibility that I'm looking for. Yeah, like I'm looking like without much great severe injury, yet like that on top driving is like scenario that I'm looking for. So like by the time but like I'm then at that point, it is that rush being in like a situation where like they be able to like quickly run away or escape from at that point from Chile is like the scenario that happened. So like at that point, like I'm definitely like poor Nancy and John that had each and every single one of them like totally would be like trying to like protect from that. And I'm like maybe by that crash like and maybe 11 that will be quickly getting assistant the boss. It's like also like about that also maybe 11 not being able to like too much and like at that point like Mike and others like struggling to like easily away from that 11 and while like Billy would be like that badly injuring and side landing each and every so, one by one is like open up that right. Yeah, like I mentioned while that way like while all of them would be getting injured and badly injured and sidelined again which would be about to like land like attack on like 11, and that very last second is when I was bring like the team of like uh Hopper and team like finally maybe managing to like succeed in like this point like the competition, and like at that very last second like falling into that like really getting stopped is like scenario that I'm the question of today. Okay, so the clear number three understanding right now is that like even though Rebellion can speak what yeah, and even though the black spirit case like only having two possibilities, like one possibility is for like proper even though like Rebellion like using his like Russian will be like somehow making progress in trying to like get past like the checkpoint like checkpoint and writing like maybe at that point like pop up totally like in a careless manner like totally ending up messing up while like that Russian uh, officer would be asking for something. It's like the in Russian. It's like the possible scenario that I'm looking in that way like that's how this guy's and getting low like the one possible scenario that I'm looking. So like at that point, like most likely Hopper once again like using his weapon and basically taking out that officer at like the checkpoint location. It's like the one possible scenario that I'm looking. The other possible scenario that I'm looking is for like in that at that checkpoint like location like in the like definitely like of the feeling a bit suspicious with like the interaction of like even though through the Russian like from the point of at that point will be interacting like I'm still think feel a bit suspicious so like him most likely that officer Russian of the Morebo man to like show his like ID. So like at that point I'm looking like Morebo man might have something to brought up about that part. So like definitely I'm looking like once like the officer will be at the checkpoint will be asking Morebo man for like the idea like Morebo man and Russian will be trying to like say something to like totally to have like an excuse. So like at that point there's something like that of like about to like pick up his like weapon. So like at that point felt like how like just like using his like weapon taking out that of and basically like once again like the stealth plan like that correct of like Murago and thing like that correct once again. There's also like giving the other parts of the knowledge that I was about to get. Like the playable thing like since they are in like the more like like exactly like my temples would be named exactly where like elements like their exhaust would be so like the flame like to be by the time like to be would be like making it like enter into like the more like definitely might probably quickly like find it like great quantity of like photos and from like the more language means only giving it to like 11 and definitely able to bring back that probably replenishing like 11's like stamina and energy and that making 11 like even with like the bone like make still making 11 like ready to like totally uh to for that ultimate battle against like city re-battle against like city like scenario that I'm looking at and okay, so like select one possibility that I'm looking at. The possibility that I'm looking at for like 11% not being able to select this or like helping this might be due to lack the pipe from like the minimum clear like ending up in like maybe in like can spreading kind of like a situation. And basically like that spreading might be like the beginning stages of like the process of like 11 getting turned into like a mini Mindflayer upset as well, transforming into like a maybe humanoid mini Mindflayer upset might be like the case that main operation and like from that bite market the process might have already began might have been like the case and hence like maybe being like the reason for like 11 losing or like silicon disposal like the possibility that I'm going. Yeah, like I'm going to bring like that period then I'm going to bring like even though 11 might have as part of like that factor like even though 11 losing if that's the factor for like 11 losing our elegant because still I'm for like 11 might have gained like uh, powers of like the mini micro about which like 11% might be totally unaware of. This is also like the other possibility that I'm working. So like by the time like Billy has like the other possibility that I'm working, by the time Billy is making sense of like anything like 11 and would be attacking 11 like maybe while trying 11 while trying to like defend herself like 11 so maybe at that point like raising up arms and while trying to like defend herself maybe at that point like 11 suddenly realizing that she has like attained like the physical toughness kind of like a bit of like powers of like the mini mind flash through that effect of like the bite now. It's like the other popularity that I'm going to and work also the tool confidential writers so like maybe affect about like there being like multiple shops doing like functions more like containing uh containing so much of like fireworks just like also like also through that image. So like maybe I'm looking like by the time like Jonathan would be like like fixing like the new ignition cables onto like natural stuff like and maybe Lucas as well, like maybe like fighting like the mini mind flare using like those firewalls to solve for like from those shots as well. It's also like about that and it's about the thing and everything. Because and those lags fighting like the mini mind flare using all those like great quantity of like firewall as well. It's also like of that and it's about the thing. The other people that I'm referring is for like maybe for like the minimize flare like maybe learn from its like setbacks during like initial fight against like 11 and this time like in front like the minimize flare like maybe like carefully ensuring to like keep its like guard up and focusing on everyone. So like I'm referring like maybe like Johnson with like the new ignition cable like to be running and will be trying to like make it to like exit like at that point I'm looking for like the minimum flare like using like technical like feedback to be attacking towards like what Johnson would be and at that point like I'm looking maybe Johnson like barely managing to like escape that like but like I'm looking in the process like maybe like that ignition cable like I'm looking like getting cut off it's like also like the lot of things that I'm looking for so getting ignition cable like fall in between like a lot of like rubble and basically maybe like by the time that it's going to be delivery like moving the rubble and maybe managing to like find like the ignition cable like and like it would have totally cut off as well. Like the ignition cable as well and it would have cut off as well. So we're like by the like I'm super like everyone being in trouble by like the attack of like the minimize flare that I'm different like terms of giving up on their plans to like escape and instead to like only face like the minimize flare and like to do their absolute best and to take advantage of like everything that contains like two elements to it like within like the small fucking small to like fight like the mini fight and bring down like the minimize flare. So like definitely that way like might and all of them like probably deciding that take absolute advantage then I would bring like in 11 state like it being either of tier to like 11 like at present like from the white map like going through starting to go through like the transformation of like getting transformed into like a noise mind person or like due to like 11 like stamina being totally trained out being like being one of these possibilities that I'm looking for in like might be the reason for like 11 at present not being able to like use some telekinesis about like snap that and regardless I'm only for like 11 luckily herself as well that would be still attempting to like fight back against like the lady mind flare like whichever way she can like might take advantage of like anything she can find in like the mod or something is like also like about the characters. So like especially might and all of them like can like take advantage of like all the things available in like the mod to like fight which would be containing like these elements to it like to fight like the mini mind flare. It's like the scenario that I'm basically like and I'm so like this fight progressing to the point where like eventually I'm looking like the fight eventually ending up reaching a point where like the due to like the constant movement of like the heavy and minimum player like and different like eventually the ground giving in to like the extreme weight and like to all the damages and caused during like the fighting and everything like and different like the ground eventually giving in to like the point of like the minimum player eventually uh, ending up precisely by 2 points like precisely falling onto like the ground giving in and like the new and precisely falling into like the Russian energy level. Can you like the more into pressure points into like on top of that exactly on top of like the commerce machine and that way like a huge important like happening and like which would be instantly taking out like the minimum flare like all the green liquid like fit around to like the commerce machine all of that like basically one like the minimum flare would be falling onto like the commerce machine that would be at that point would be creating that useless person in which like that which will be having that impact on like the element player and the element player like instantly getting wiped out by that person like the scenario that I'm looking at. And due to like the giant size of like the minimum player like covering that explosion like I'm consolidated to that factor alone like I'm thinking like the minimum player alone mainly taking like the most impact of like the explosion by sheerly due to that factor alone like I'm thinking like pop up as even at that point during the expert like pop up as well as like choice as well as like more information as well that we are looking like barely managing to like survive and like definitely I'm looking like everything will be starting to like slowly collapse towards like from like the hope of like the Russian secret energy level. So like definitely as like everything will be collapsing like in different like the team of like sort of Joyce as well as like Norebom and like barely managing to like make it towards like the elevator and like as like the elevator would be going up like and the different like the elevator itself would be like shaking and basically still like them probably barely managing to like make it to next upper and basically like the moment like of as well as the moment we're running out of like the elevator as well the elevator area of like, the building as well totally collapsing like the scenario that everything and that way like Mike and all of them like at that point like we are running out of like the Hawkins Mall and at that point like the entirety of like the Hawkins Mall land totally collapsing and getting destroyed and into like such a situation where like it would be like a huge toll on like the property where like the Hawkins Mall stood out in leading to where like the to like a huge pit where like in the bottom like the Russian energy secret energy level it would be in its like absolute destroyed state after that explosion of like the world and simultaneously the gate as well without totally like got automatic report that is less essential other possible end scenario in that of like the current situation again of like the fight against like the main mind club is like the eventual other possible scenario that I'm keeping on the trend. And so to answer the question like this whole explosion and like collapse of like the ceiling and everything to be exactly maybe eventually how solely through this like how like that operative by agent that will be eventually getting taken out during like the exact moment that he will out of the family. Once again had that like one was one fight against like in which like the operations by agent would out of the offer and if we could offer and will be about to take out offer. So like at that very last second I'm looking like that maybe by sheer points was like basically all this like explosion and everything happening and like with like the ceiling collapsing and it'll be that way that the Russians by operative by then getting taken out and like offer somebody is like also like in those possible scenarios that I'm making over and putting. Also the next to the environment permission that like the environment player eventually would be dedicated like reflecting the scenario that I'm and the gate being close towards like the end of the season is like the scenario that I'm and by then like I'm putting that the definitely I'm putting by then like Nancy will be totally definitely at that point like Nancy and Jonathan like definitely I'm looking by then like once like the gate will be closed like and definitely the bosses of like Nancy as well as like Jonathan like Tom as well as like the other boss like all of them would be getting saved due to like the midwife getting taken out. It's like the scenario that I'm just about to put. And at that point, I'm putting that definitely most likely maybe like the situation even being like Nancy and Jonathan who are like currently job that like I'm putting maybe at that point like the boss like me. At that point, like the boss comes from the point of view of the being totally willing to like take them back. Uh, at like their job, like the scenario that I was putting. But and at that point, I'm totally putting like Jonathan would be totally being totally pleased. But like at that point, like Nancy straight away that absolutely different very confident like basically walking up to like the boss and basically telling them that like she's resigning and basically like and that Jonathan as well as later friend would be along the lines and like Nancy boldly like saying that to the face and basically like Nancy will be pulling Jonathan away and I was bring like conscious Jonathan and like Nancy was leading and at that point like Nancy would have had like clarity as to like what to do next in her life as to like how to survive and everything like Nancy definitely I'm thinking at that point would have a big switch in her mind like definitely that they have to keep the world safe. They have to keep Hawkins safe. So like definitely if they have to keep Hawkins safe like the they have to be totally alert at all times and should have their guard up for like any unusual happenings in like something since like the Forgotten Mind Florence has like still not given up on like the battle even after so, all this time like since like the like the Forgotten Mind Flora is like so extremely persistent like and figure out okay figured that basically that she's going to like and figured and taking the decision to like reach out a detective agency which definitely meant for emergency for like Nancy and Jonathan to like to team up and like to start a detective agency would be along the lines like Nancy would be telling Jonathan. And at that point, Jonathan would be totally feeling as if like kind of like a good idea, like basically that way for like so that like Nancy could be totally alert, like basically it's like even if like there's like this like unusual change happening in like how like the people like how would be calling and calling like the detective agency would be along like Nancy would be hoping so like that way so that they could be always alert would be along the lines like Nancy would be saying it's definitely monetary appreciation. So for any future possibility of like any future fight against like the Mindflayer or like against like the person, it will be along the lines like Nancy getting the new. So like at that point, like I'm saying like while Nancy and Jonathan would be taking his position and like the different like Jonathan would be totally at that point maybe excited and like Jonathan would be heading back home and would be telling about the to like Joyce and especially I'm looking especially at present with like Joyce right now telling of at present like about like Joyce like detective about like on husband like detective bias like I'm totally definitely Joyce definitely would be definitely wanting like would be definitely seriously having that absolute interest towards like wanting genuine and straight like wanting to be detective is definitely not definitely I'm looking that one uh Jonathan and Nancy and Jonathan would have decided to become detectives and start a detective agency and Jonathan would be like coming home and basically literally telling about the like Joyce and would be still telling her about like how that and at that point maybe Johnson telling Joyce that they still have to like figure out how to like to like get like the money to that start like this like security agency and everything and while they're just saying Johnson would be actually saying just to like Joyce without like any intention at all of like asking money from like Joyce like yeah like I'm looking Joyce on hearing that like would be getting so excited as well because of like definitely by now will be that really so passionately wanting to do that desiring to be educated the potential that way like Joyce as well for helping like Nancy and Jonathan as well as like Nancy's mother as well who totally believes in like Nancy and uh like Nancy like genuinely and like basically Nancy like believes like I'm totally in like both Johnson's like mother would be helping whichever way she can and would be also wanting to like be part of like this effective agency and like Nancy definitely would be only agreeing to that minimum supervision. Definitely I'm like Nancy's mother as well like helping out like in setting up like the effective agency is like the scenario that I'm looking for. So like that way like I'm like Nancy, Jonathan and Joyce detective agency getting formed in like season in like the beginning stages of like in like the beginning stages of like season 4 of Stranger Things like the scenario that I'm looking for the original of the answer right. When for the information I'm told and maybe at that point like for them to like maybe name the detective agency NJJ detective agency like Nancy, Jonathan and Joyce detective agency. It's like also like a new of the scenario that I'm looking for the information of the okay, so then the flavor of the right now is probably like look at right now most likely sporting like the shop like a bit higher in like tomorrow. One of like the shop usually like the firewall shop like the scenario that catching like a little attention and like look straight away like telling us like plan to like most likely my candle like to basically for them to like head off to like that firewall shop and for them to like attempt to like fight back against like this like minimal players like scenario that I'm maybe I'm looking like that way through Lucas like I'm looking like might probably deciding definitely I'm looking like since like 11 can't use her powers like definitely Mike and since like Mike and was aware of it like I'm looking definitely most likely Lucas convincing Mike that basically in the situation like they themselves will have to like fight off against like the minimal and like this time it's like actually their turn to like work to save 11 for like this and that time 11 times save the payments like the lines like Lucas will be telling Mike and like a different like only then totally taking that decision and usually with that after still like I'm let them totally making it to like that part of shop and like basically then getting all those fireworks like so that after them getting all those fireworks ready and like basically shooting out like the fireworks at like the main right plan and that I'm looking for like again marking like the beginning of like the rebattle against like the main right plan is like the scenario that I'm looking for. So like during the rebattle like I'm positioned to like a huge hall like area like surrounded by like shops on like all sides like and different that way like and like I can also like that way entering into like all these like multiple shops to like hide from like that type of like movement club and like also picking up like all sorts of like stuff with like key elements to it and they will be launching their attack for like movement club while after launching their attack like once again going in on like the hiding in like other shops as well and like in a repeated manner, like then doing this as like a strategy to like fight the minimal club as like the ultimate value strategy against like the minimal club. which unfortunately like eventually at the reaching a point where like it would be backfiring and it will be at that point exactly that I'm supposed to be. And it will be exactly at that point when that strategy will be backfiring. And that's the minimize plus like intent attack will be about putting that on a sonar that might at 11 that is like might most likely stand in front of like 11 and that to protect 11 with like anyway he can basically get like might being able to preventing at that situation. So like usually has like the minimize plus like like that would be about to land on like my candidate and that way last again is when I'm looking for like the ground like giving in and like collapsing to me like the force of like the minimize towards like the safe construction another laboratory location where like on top of like the community happening at that point is like the scenario that I'm sitting on the note. Okay, so like that make my consideration right now that like the minimum club might actually not be having any height at all on it like it might be like that like if it's city but minimum it might be that exact like tiny tentacle like thing that it can extends that tentacle like thing which can like even from that fight injury on like 11 like that might be like the only height and like point of like vision alone uh, that like the minimum club will be having might be the case in experiment. So like the plan for like might most likely a person like may figure just out with like the minimum flare like struggling to find that my kind of person basically that with this like tentacle narrow tentacle like thing like it extending it like the flame was super like might maybe like come to such a conclusion and come to different like maybe like Mike right now most likely using something that would be some sort of like a weapon that is available where they're hiding and basically to like destroy like that tentacle like thing is like the bottom scenario that I'm looking for. And from that point on, like the minimum flare, like losing into like vision is like the limited scenario that I'm looking for. And that way, like Mike and Rose like getting that advantages like kind of like a situation. At that point, it's like also like a limited focus scenario that I'm looking for. And okay, so like the female prevention right now is definitely for like more governments like mission like to totally fail. So leading to like the cutting spies and like him with like him right now making it totally making it to like quicker than the level thinking that Lee would be like strongly feeling that is leaderly that the like that eventually like the operand members will be showing up at like the location regardless of like the stealthy information that they will be showing up at like the location of like the complex message. So like the clear will bring like a person like the participants of agent might be hiding somewhere close to like that complex machine and waiting for like operand to like show up. So the claim to bring like as like more enrollment would be about to so like as like more enrollment according to like the mission plan like would be about to do whatever it is that like to be planning to do to like the complex machine like just because he would be able to like do it like empathy and like most likely getting attacked and captured by like the operations by agents like the scenario that I'm doing and the look for like the operations by agent actually not taken out of that unlike in that not state like I'm doing like the operations by agent at present like not taking out like more moment like the scenario that I'm doing so like the operations by agent might want to like the response with like hopper so like the operations by agent like capturing more moment and would be shouting out to like pop up and basically like and things not being able to like find pop up. So like at that point he will be frustrated and like he will be totally at that point like threatening Morai Bowman to like to totally call out for like pop up and to bring pop up to towards like the fire if that Morai Bow if Morai Bowman wants him to like spare will be along the line from the bring like most likely like the fire will be making that absolute threat to like more government by capturing more government. It's like the scenario that I'm saying and like to like these like communications between like more government and like nothing as well as like overall in like a forward message kind of manner like like more government like while like at that point like exactly using like really phone like contacting but at the same time like doing so in such a way to like let while make that message to like pop up seem convincing to like the person fires and as if, like moreover when agreeing to like the person fires and like moreover when would be doing so in such a way to like with that pop up note that basically that moreover moment like we can have failed and has been captured like the scenario that I'm looking over and my opinion. which at that point, like even though pop-up won't be getting it, like it's like the scenario that I'm doing. Still, choice number different activities would be only getting it that line format that we captures like the scenarios that I'm doing. And even after that message, if like format, I can from the front like the purchase price in like still deciding to actually format in like captivity and to like complete wait until to ensure that we actually get off like face to face uh, uh, to wait until then to like take out that no right on it. Would be along the lines like the page that point would be deciding it's like in our parameter parameter. It is like a layman preemption right now is that like the entire code might be three individual code and three individual keys might be like actually distributed in the layman frame. So like there are being three what appear as like three like on top of like the number like and like so with like first like the first code of like the first three numbers might have to be for like the first light to turn green might be like this and then after like the light turning green might be like only at that point that like the next three numbers of like the course might have to like for like the second lights to like turn green and like then like the third three sets of like numbers in like the course having to be first for like the third light as well to be turns green and it will be only at that point that like the door behind like the lock code to be getting open might be like the activity of the situation which like at present like copper as well as growth might be totally getting wrong and hence like even thinking like the code is wrong might be like activity of the situation definitely might be very interesting right now. It is like definitely might be very interesting right now, definitely for like Nancy and like the very last moment is when now it's only when now the for like Nancy would be even thinking of like basically pointing and aiming like the weapon at like the styles of like the incoming charging release like the scenario that I'm doing. That is the thing in like while Mike and all of them would be also think that basically really with this laptop will be only crashing onto them that at that very last second I'm sorry like Nancy like pointing at like the tire of the Billy's car and like at that very last second like Billy's like car like sitting and sitting away and basically uh, Billy along with staff and crashing is like the scenario that I'm and Nancy at that point like not flinching even at that very last second while Mike and all of the others would be like the least screaming with that absolute fear. It's like the winter scenario that I'm that way like Nancy getting a very moment at that point. It's like the scenario that I'm seeing. And at that point, one actually would be crashing. At that point, itself, and that Jonathan attempt to like start their car like would be Nancy's car would be also find it in the person. And basically like them straight away getting onto the car and it's like scenario that I'm looking at. So that's a like demonstration right now that's sitting on the system for like regardless of like how much like Captain and Suzie are in love right now. At present like I'm different like in the like the future in like future four itself like brings things in like I'm thinking like Suzie breaking stuff and stuff like for the scenario that I'm looking and at present itself like basically while like at present like while Dustin and Suzie are like romantically like basically communicating with each other like the fact that Erika straight away interrupts and destroys it all and basically just enough like in Erika saying enough would be definitely most likely secretly Erika most likely due to like Erika maybe most likely feeling jealous and like secretly Erika most likely uh, having a massive crush on like that's not really might be the case human preemption. Definitely I'm different like so in season four of strange things like but we are different like in like the second stage of like season four of strange things as well like different like that outbreak of like something happening and basically like that person would be like at that point like would be extremely sad and like I'm totally fine like at that point like I'm just like Erika and Erika at that point would be spending time with like Dustin like spending to like totally empathize with like Dustin uh while at the same time like pretending to like care at all while within like Erika would be like totally excited that like and happy that like basically like that Susie broke up like the so that like basically a gap would be seeing that like opportunity to like probably make something like the scenario that I'm looking over like kind of thing. So like I'm looking like most likely maybe a few years passing but by the time season three will be over and like before like once like season four begins like I'm probably trying most likely for there to be a time skip of like maybe at least um 3 years like what I'm looking